Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Opinions My Own, your favorite podcast about anti-money laundering technology and the law. I'm Zila Acosta-Grimes, one of your co-hosts, and I'm here with my colleague, Paul Caulfield. We have an exciting episode today. We are talking about video games and money laundering, which are maybe words you never thought you'd hear in the same sentence. But Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about our guests and a little bit about the topic for today?
I think this is one of the topics that is very underreported. We talked about diamonds a few weeks ago. We obviously felt that that one was important enough. I think this one is even more important because it is so underreported about how much money laundering is occurring within the video gaming space. We talk about it. It's actually even a component within one actual video game that you can fake launder money and commit a forgery in games. And then so it's what we're actually talking about is the actual crime of money laundering, the actual crime of terrorist financing. And we have two really fantastic guests. Jean-Loup Richet is out of the Sorbonne in France. He made time for us from Paris, an academic who's worked with Europol. He'll explain his background. Benji Preminger is out of Israel, Yale, double grad out of with a cybersecurity, a company called Cybersixgill. And it's not a coincidence as we close at the episode. It's not a coincidence that this is an international episode. It's concerning because everyone right now is talking about crypto. There's a lot of discussion, and some of it is irrational about what's going on with these crypto assets, 6,000 plus crypto assets. That's not this episode. This is actually talking about other items of value, whether it is weapons within the games or emotions, they call them emotes, whether it's skins, whether it's donating to the streamer. There is significant money laundering going on, and there's zero enforcement. And if there is, it's somewhat toothless. No one is walking that virtual beat. No one is walking that virtual beat with machine learning, with robotics, process automation. No one is watching, is tending the store. And so what we hope is over the course of this episode, you get an appreciation at these, while they are games, there is quite a bit of threat within them. Jean-Loup, middle of the episode, talked about, and I actually forgot about this, when Al-Qaeda was using World of Warcraft to actually chat with one another as they were, as they used it as ability to chat with one another to, run their operations. So we very much thank them for the time. And here's the episode of Opinions My Own with Jean-Loup Richet and Benji Preminger. As we've been talking about So as we've been talking about it over the past few months, the various channels of anti-money laundering or money laundering within the various industries, we've got two really great guests today. Jean-Loup Richet is in France teaching at the Sorbonne, and Benji Preminger works with Cybersixgill out of Israel. They've got much more than their current roles. And so why don't we do this? Benji, why don't you kind of level set for the listeners, give us a little bit of your background, and then we'll turn to Jean-Loup, and then we'll get going.
Sure. Thanks, Paul. And great to be here. So I've been in sort of the intersection of foreign/public policy, tech, and economics for a while now. I got my education, both bachelor's and master's, at Yale and Johns Hopkins. Worked in the public sector in the Israeli embassy in DC, then moved over to the startup world back here in Israel, working both at my previous company and currently as product manager at Cybersixgill, where I'm managing products in the threat intelligence space, where we're basically collecting data, provisioning it, and enabling investigations in real time on intelligence from closed access, deep and dark web forums, closed access instant messenger groups, all these places and closed off communities where threat actors, users are discussing anything from fraud, money laundering, through cyber attacks, malware, exploitations, all the way to what we call law enforcement use case, whether it's dealing with drugs, terrorist activity, things of that nature.
Before I ask you questions, let me turn it to Jean-Loup. Jean-Loup, you want to give a little bit of an introduction about yourself, what you're teaching at Sorbonne, a little bit more about all the different pieces that you've published, and then we can get going.
Okay, so I'm an associate professor at the Sorbonne, but before that, I had 10 years in industry, working in the field of cybersecurity, working as an expert for Europol, the CIPOL, and so on. And now I'm co-chairing, the research, the risk research chair at the Sorbonne Business School, working in the field of cybersecurity research. I'm interested also in innovation mechanism in cyber criminal communities. So it's for the global understanding of what we are going to talk in the coming hour.
So let's jump in. Within the past few weeks, we previewed this, I don't know, 3 weeks ago before Thanksgiving. We're after Thanksgiving right now. Facebook's becoming Meta, or is Meta. There has been a recent article out of Turkey about 24 some odd hundred streamers who were kind of working as mules to launder upwards of $10 million in the gaming community. This is an episode about money laundering within video gaming. We've talked about cryptocurrency in another episode. We've talked about concentrated value in tangible assets such as diamonds. And here we're in the virtual world, the intangible. We're not necessarily going to talk solely about cryptocurrencies, but rather virtual assets. And so let me turn to Jean-Loup. Level set for us the environment within the video game industry on what the actual risks are right now.
That's a good question. We have all seen the move. I mean, from my past research on the video game industry back in 2012, where things were blurred at the boundaries, where I don't know if you're familiar with loot boxes, for instance, and the regulation around online casinos and regulation. So from 2012 to now, 2020, things have moved. And now also video game companies, of course, are not as regulated as the banking sector. I mean, there's no know your customer policies in online games. But now they are under more and more under the spotlight. You have seen the recent Twitch cases. We've seen the Valve cases about online casinos and the use of keys by fraudsters. So I think it's I will say it's more under the spotlight than ever. And with recent cases of money laundering in the video game, Korean MMORPGs. Well, maybe this is something we are going to talk in the coming years about what can law enforcement agencies can do in terms of investigation in such gaming context. Yeah.
Benji, take one part of your research in the report that you wrote out in 2019. Take one aspect and describe how does money laundering occur within the video game industry?
So I think there's a couple ways you can look at it, but I think the key aspect of it is looking at all these underground illicit communities and all these underground markets that are operating, whether it's deep web, dark web, closed access communities now that are moving more to instant messaging apps like Telegram and the likes, where people are just trading in sort of en masse in all of these accounts and currencies and these virtual currencies. I think at the time I was focusing on my reports more at Fortnite, which was really coming to a head in terms of its popularity and was spiking at that time. But that was just one example of many of these sort of immersive worlds that are becoming very, very popular beyond just sort of niche audiences. And all of these worlds that are having virtual currencies within those that are having ways in and out of conversion from digital or virtual currencies to fiat, to cash, and vice versa. And so whether it's trading in-game and then conversion to fiat, or trading in these currencies in the underground, basically threat actors or criminals, cyber criminals are able to go in and out of these systems in a way that's generally unregulated. And as Jean-Loup sort of mentioned, there's not as much regulation around this stuff because it is usually smaller amounts than either sort of big money transfers when we're thinking about sort of general financial systems. And of course, there's the sort of virtual aspect of it that doesn't exist with things like gems and the likes, which you referenced in the previous episode that you guys ran.
The with Fortnite, so Fortnite, if I have it correct, there is an in-game currency called V-Bucks.
Correct. Yeah.
And so if I'm the illicit actor, I'm either going to directly or using gamers that have agreed, whether they know it or not, to purchase these V-Bucks at a higher value and then to resell them at a discount. Is that fair?
Yeah, that is certainly one of the ways, and I think I described that in a report of this funny sort of arbitrage going on between locations around the world of different prices of V-Bucks, which was, leveraging my econ background. I thought it was very cool just because you were thinking about ways in which I think Argentina had lower prices than Europe, for example, and just by nature of economics, you were able to sort of quickly run that arbitrage and make money literally off of nothing. And that sort of compounds the problem of sort of the potential money laundering and the other cyber criminal around that.
Yeah, and Jean, both you and Jean-Loup said, lightly regulated. It's not even enforced. I Googled enforcement and video gaming, AML, really couldn't find much. I found a few things of late, but it's just not enforced. And so with Jean-Loup, you posted here, we're on a Zoom and you posted a chat, it comes down to the exchangers. Right now, none of these exchangers are regulated. They're operating on the deep and the dark web, closed off from the communities, as Benji said in the beginning. Do you think that these exchanges are going to, the dark ones are going to somehow get further enforced to force exchanges to become regulated?
I think we got a similar issue with the cryptocurrencies war, in the cryptocurrency war, where at first in 2016, 2017, well, exchangers in the past, Binance and stuff like that, they were not really on the trend in terms of AML regulation, and now they are under scrutiny. Exchangers from the clear web, cryptocurrency exchanger from the clear web are monitored, and we saw recently with Binance issue that it shows their limitation. At the other side, we've got video game currencies exchangers, and because it's not as popular as cryptocurrencies, they were always considered as a lesser fish in this large sea of unregulated exchangers. But well, we see that in the field in video game gray market, where product prices where cosmetic items can reach a significant amount of money, that there are more and more used. And so your question was about the state of exchangers. But there are plenty of video game money exchangers in the clear web. I mean, you may not need to go under the radar and have a look at the kind of stuff we can find in any dark web. What the trend I'm seeing is the use of dark web exchangers, crypto, but also video game exchangers, and the increased use of peer-to-peer exchange and over-the-counter exchange as a way for money launderer to overcome this limitation related to exchangers. Because when you just think as a money launderer, if you trust an exchanger from the dark net, I mean, you can leave at any moment with your money. They are using a large, they are having a chain of exchangers using multiple exchangers for large sum of money, and sometimes use over-the-counter and in the form of foreign boards, post where one can exchange $2,000 for I don't know, World of Warcraft gold, and so on. So it's still investigated by Europol and French police forces because shady exchangers attract shady people and transact and money laundering transactions. On the other side, the exchangers we can find on the clear web are not really paradoxically not really investigated.
Go ahead, Zila.
No, I was just going to note that the exchangers that you're describing, Jean-Loup, in the United States would most likely, in many of their activities, would fall under the categorization of being a money service business or some type of regulation that would, at least in the United States, require registration and some type of AML program. Like Paul mentioned, even though that's technically true, there isn't a lot of enforcement of that. And so I guess I wanted to know from both of you whether those systems of regulation are something you think are going to be effective if they even were enforced. Like, is that the way to attack this money laundering and to prevent it, to kind of go after these exchangers? Are there other kind of parties that would be better, more effective?
I see your point about PCI DSS and such regulation related to online transactions. So most of the official exchangers comply with PCI DSS, and so that's why it's not a lot of investigation about current clear web exchangers. But I share your view that attacking exchangers, it's at the core and the center of the fight against money laundering online. Because to obfuscate the path of money, money launderer will try to exchange gold coin for Bitcoin, for instance, and then Bitcoin for Dogecoin, Ethereum, and any other crypto, perfect money, or I don't know, Bitmonero. But they will use multiple exchangers as a way to obfuscate and moving from video games money to cryptocurrency wallet to PayPal, and then to Western Union, for instance, and then to online transfer, banking transfer to British Virgin Islands, and so on and so forth. So combining the tool set to obfuscate the path of money. And I see your points, and that's I think it's best to think to better investigate and regulate the different kinds of exchangers to cut to have a better view on the flow of money and to cut that kind of strategies.
But I think also, in addition to the exchangers, the companies themselves that own and run the systems, whether it's Meta or Epic Games and Fortnite and all these big vendors that are really multi-billion-dollar companies for the most part, in a sense, own the data and are able to track the activity in a way that sort of a second or a third party service where you do the exchange is not able to, right? Essentially, when again we're thinking of Meta or Epic Games or the World of Warcraft folks, they are able to see all of the transaction among people between different entities, and they, in a real sense, you know, they control the supply of virtual money, right? So in that sense, they're almost like a central bank and are able to sort of run internal enforcement in that sense. So it really should be sort of it's not even a whole of government, it's a whole of industry effort in the sense of you have the companies that sort of control the flow of funds internally inside the virtual worlds, the games. You have the exchangers, and then of course you have the government, the law enforcement agencies that are able to really sort of crack the whip in terms of enforcement, fines, criminal charges, wherever relevant.
You're much too optimistic. Yeah.
Oh no, that is not that is a sort of ideal situation, not a sort of, you know.
Yeah, I want to add that the challenge now will be to convince video game companies to set up pattern detection and behavioral tracking, that kind of stuff that will slow down the servers and
yeah.
And
I mean,
contrary to what they want to do. But
I'm sure all of these companies. I'm sure all of these companies track user behavior to a level that is like way beyond what most folks would imagine. But it's used for increasing revenue as opposed to any sort of enforcement of regulation.
Let's break down. We're going to break down first the Twitch case out of Turkey. Basically, what was happening, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've tried to get this. I'm trying to get this right. You have streamers. You had somewhere around 2,400 video game streamers. They weren't necessarily the top streamers. They were identifiable enough that they would receive or agreed to receive the donations to support their streams. And the aggregate went up to what was reported to be $10 million. And these donations would go across to the streamers, but then they had previously agreed to then refund 80% of the funds back to the person or the people or the actors, the illicit actors that were giving them the funds, thereby laundering that money. Whether it was in a Bitcoin, it doesn't matter. It's a thing of value. And that this was being done, that it was very widely known and acknowledged. And I think only as it became more and more known and then ultimately reported, did I think the Turkish government really raise quite a stink about it.
Well, I would say so. Again, the good old online money mule. I mean, we see plenty of scams like that. Work from home, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, it's not. I don't think it's original.
No,
it's an original case, but it just show that it has gone mainstream. Online money laundering has gone mainstream, and from recent cases, I mean, just 4 years ago, $65 million were laundered. This big South Korean case where they discovered $65 million laundered through Korean online games. And now with this Twitch case under the spotlight, it just shows that it's still it's current.
So the way that the industry would prevent that from happening is if you are an influencer, if you have the ability to stream and get these donations, you're going to have to start to agree to understanding where that, not just where the money is coming from, the donates are coming from, but also that you're not going to be engaging in that type of in that type of behavior, because whether they knew about it, whether they were knowingly complicit or they looked the other way, I think the standard for those streamers, gamers, is going to rise. But let me tell you the other one, which is more concerning. Right now, you have 2.8 billion users in gaming, and this is a recent report that came out. You know, the average age demographic is, you know, skews well below the age of 25, if you think of the majority. And if I'm a young man or a young woman gaming and I'm trying to get, a weapon, a skin, an emote, and I can go into an online marketplace and get something at a significant discount, I'm going to pay for that. And what the bad actors doing is they are buying up these weapons at a significant price and then selling them at a deep discount. How do you police that?
That's really the challenge, isn't it? Right. And that's, I think the point, the sort of demographic point is significant. What you pointed was it's really a sort of easy to prey on victim community if you're really talking about the much lower range of, essentially children with their father's bank account or, parents' bank account or what have you, in a way being sort of implicit participants in this sort of AML conspiracy, right? And to Jean-Loup's point, right, certainly the secondary exchanges, I think, are just a practice that I'm not sure how long can continue, but certainly shouldn't continue because there's just no reason to have secondary markets for these virtual goods, right? I'm not sure why the companies themselves are continuing to support it, the sort of gaming companies, because I don't know, I don't think it serves them certainly any purpose. They're not cutting any profits off of it. But certainly it's very easy to find and certainly fishy when you see someone selling something at a 10, 20, 30% discount of the market price when it's something that's just, there is a fixed cost to it, right? It's not something that's, sort of fluctuating according to market values like sort of freely exchanged good.
The irony is right now, if I turned on Bloomberg right now, I guarantee you within the hour, I would hear about the price of Bitcoin, the price of Ether. And this has just been, there's 6,000 right now crypto assets, 6,000, 7,000 crypto assets. Those are, again, intangible things of value that are now being tracked, Coinbase, whatever else. But then you have this right now, an unknown number of intangible assets of value that are within the gaming space that are getting traded just as rigorously. But this has been going on for, at least when you talked about 2012 or 2010 with the unlawful gaming act coming out of the US, this has been going on for much longer. And it's ironic, and it's somewhat concerning when you think of how much focus is over here with the crypto assets as opposed to what has been going on for so long. And Jean-Loup, you said something where, smaller fish, but laundering $10 million, that can exact, quite a bit of damage if you've got, someone who is really trying to, pull off something that could be, of a terrorist nature.
There were cases, I don't know if you remember this case of Al-Qaeda meeting in World of Warcraft, and the fact it was under investigation. I can't remember the year, but well, but I'm not into terrorism and terrorist organization, more into a criminal organization online. And just to add to what you said about the fact small fish don't attract less than the bigger fish out there. We saw exactly this kind of stuff since 2009, 2010 on different video games. And we were able to, thanks to open API and gaming, the gaming community, for instance, in Team Fortress 2, they got this API where all marketplace prices and buying and selling were tracked. And even in 2010, the video game community was able to identify strange behaviors from Russian actors that were, well, obviously laundering money using a bot or a script, and and buying with stolen money, maybe PayPal or other things, but buying keys to buy on the marketplace items at higher value and reselling them at lower value with which makes absolutely no sense from an economic point of view. But which was like a 30,000 money laundering each month. I mean, $30,000 each month. So it's small money. It's a small amount of money. We are unable to know how many bots this Russian money laundering ring was having, but maybe 5 or 6 bots. But what was interesting was the response from the video game company, which was just refunding the money to people that get their PayPal account hacked. So they were just refunding, but never deleting the keys that entered the market and that were bought and created due to hacking.
And then you have companies like Take-Two, which for Grand Theft Auto, there's actually an in-game ability to launder. It's part of the game. You've got money. It's not a value, but what are you going to do to set up a money laundering enterprise? And you can actually go and buy a store and then launder your in-game money. You can't convert it to any fiat currency or any crypto asset, but it's actually something that you can do for fun. What are you doing as the criminal in GTA? Oh, right now for the next few weeks, I'm going to create a money laundering enterprise. So there's this, desensitization of, what it is and what its impact could be. And I'm getting a little school marmish here, but I think it's just more evidence of just how unpoliced it is. And Benji, you said something in the preview that I thought was funny, where you quoted or you talked about Sean Connery walking the beat in The Untouchables and taking his billy club and kind of hitting Kevin Costner's gun in his coat. And, there is none of that going on. And we kind of talked about it and said, well, not only is there not someone walking the beat virtually in these games, there doesn't seem to be anything that is being deployed or even considered from a law enforcement standpoint of, whether it's artificial intelligence or any type of machine learning being done to look and see, are accounts being opened for legitimate purposes? Are these transactions occurring at such voluminous rates to see what these trends are? And that is where I think we kind of touched on the words, tsunami. Right now, I think that there's a tsunami building that the law enforcement doesn't have a clue is building to the degree it is.
Yeah, certainly. And I think it's one of those cases where the problem only continues to escalate until you have the Twitch case now was $10 million. Once we see, $100 million use case, and maybe folks in, whether it's DC or in Europe, European capitals will sort of wake up to see the problem and will invest the resources, certainly with the manpower. But I think the technology piece is really key, because we are talking about digital worlds, cyberspace, et cetera, where the enforcement, the monitoring tools, the intelligence capabilities are really technology focused and based, and the solutions can only be really technological to deal with these types of sort of quote unquote digital problems, scaling issues, using AI to detect behavioral changes, anomalies, trends, et cetera. So it's never going to be the sort of classic cop walking the beat. And by the way, I think it's funny. Untouchables talks about Al Capone and the whole issue of that. In that case, he was running smuggling rings, right, of alcohol during Prohibition, but he ended up being, apprehended due to sort of essentially like a financial regulation sort of crime, right? So I think it's sort of a funny parallel of thinking about you're doing a lot of sort of illegal smuggling and such, but at the end of the day, the sort of economic portion of it is really where you can have the enforcement piece.
What do you think is going to be done globally? Because the jurisdiction is not U.S. borders. IP addresses be damned. I mean, let's forget that. What, with your work with Europol, Jean-Loup, what do you think could be done from a centralized law enforcement or quasi law enforcement body that almost must be created in order to monitor and work with, again, fine, your local law enforcement agencies?
Well, that's a tough question, and opinion are my own, of course. I will say, yeah, there are currently there are initiatives, plenty of initiatives to better track cryptocurrencies through blockchain analysis, for instance. So they are able to trace down transactions that were done in the past. For instance, getting a cyber crook that did the first transaction in Bitcoin in 2014, something like that, and now he's I think he was managing a hosting business, a bulletproof hosting companies, and using plenty of stuff to better obfuscate path of money and so on. But well, they were able to get him thanks to the past transaction he did using Bitcoin in 2013. So blockchain analysis exists, and they are currently better tying their capabilities to analyze transaction through several blockchain. But the challenge is now we are talking about something that's not public, something that's not. I mean, there is no blockchain of gold coins in an exchange in World of Warcraft. So you have to have exactly the same process they did with Europol did with telco operator, with the malware, with the ransomware, fighting ransomware, and also an antivirus company. So setting up a working group where we will have the main video game companies and discuss with them of the better way to align their interest with the one of law enforcement agencies. What can we do in terms of pattern recognition, and have kind of API that will be used, maybe used by Europol and law enforcement agency to in a similar way as in the banking sector or as in the telco sector. So there are working group currently for, well, most obvious stuff, of course, antivirus, banking, telco, and well, it may be interesting to have a similar group for video game companies and everything that relate to new trends in terms of money laundering.
And I think just to sort of dovetail on that, I think, we have to raise the question, how different from a law enforcement perspective is cryptocurrency, sort of blockchain-based currencies are different to sort of virtual world currencies like the World of Warcraft, et cetera. From an enforcement perspective, I don't think they care necessarily if it's based on a blockchain or it's owned by Epic Games,
So agree with
whomever.
you. I so agree with
you.
you.
So yeah, and since now, because crypto has become such a huge thing, it's more likely. So once we have regulation and enforcement around that to sort of level, the same sort of legal corpus around that and the enforcement around that could essentially be directly mirrored and enforced on digital world currencies. Because essentially, again, from a criminal perspective, I don't see a difference, right? The technology is different, but the sort of legal aspect of it should probably be the same.
No, that completely agree with you, Benji. I just wanted to thank you both really quickly so much. One last kind of closing question. You both have done a great job of kind of highlighting the issues, highlighting the players, highlighting the various ways in which crypto and these various currencies, if you want to call them, and online exchanges, and kind of how all of this works together to allow criminals to kind of take advantage of the systems and legitimize their funds and launder money fundamentally. But I guess we've also talked a little bit about how desperate the situations might be and how difficult it is to really combat these money launderers. And I just wondered if each of you could give us a quick 30-second, what do you think is the first step to kind of combating these money launderers? Do you think it's more regulation? Do you think it's setting up more of these exchanges that Jean-Loup talked about? Is it actually just going to these companies like you mentioned earlier, Benji, and saying, hey, shut down these secondary exchanges? Don't, what do you think is the first step that should be taken, and maybe why? And a quick 30 seconds to close.
Okay. I'll kick it off. I think it's a combination of visibility into the activity and sort of awareness of the situation from the law enforcement perspective. And that does require the industry being a part of it, right? Sort of framing out and understanding the problem across the board and having the awareness of it. Because I think both on the law enforcement angle and the sort of legislative, whether it's Congress in the US or other sort of legislative bodies in Europe, the sort of understanding of the situation and the problem is the first key to really finding the correct solutions for it.
Well,
Yes.
30 seconds, it's tough. I would say, yeah, you see the kind of paradox where video games company are in, because it's in their benefit to have more players. It's in their benefit to sell more keys that will be bought by people, money launderer, real video gamers, and use the keys to as part of their as part of playing or unlocking new stuff, crates and other loot boxes. I mean, this has become part of the business of some companies in the free-to-play industry. So some of them are really what they need this cash flow from players. And then when we will ask them this tough question about do you know who is buying such keys for you, some of them may not agree to disclose such confidential information. So yeah, so to reply to the question, I think of course we need to investigate better exchangers. Well, this is not something new, sadly, and I share your view that we need a working group at the industry at an industry level to discuss what we can do, and how the video game business can evolve toward something that will be a win-win for law enforcement agency, but also for video game companies.
Well, I'm glad that you're in Paris, Benji's in Tel Aviv, Zila and I are in New York City. I don't think that that's by coincidence. I think this is so global that we find it, yes, interesting and somewhat academically, but I also think there's real threat here. So look, thank you both. We very much appreciate your time. We highly encourage the listener to check out Jean-Loup's website, where he has access to or links to his articles. We will post that in the episode notes. And Cybersixgill, where Benji works, is doing some really interesting stuff in the cyber and information security space. So guys, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.